Hello and welcome to our webinar today. So glad that you are joining us. I'm John Poitevent. I'm the founder of Great Catholic Parishes, and I'm so grateful that you are here. I truly am. Our mission is to help parishes grow from good to great. And if you're tuned in today, if you registered for this, if you're watching this on our YouTube channel later, you are a good to great leader. The reason you're here is because you're not apathetic, you're not just content. You want your parish to thrive, you want your diocese to thrive, and you want people to encounter Christ and to grow in their faith. And I just want to thank you, and I just want you to be encouraged. Pat yourself on the back right now. You are taking time out of your day to grow as a leader and to help grow your parish. And that's what this is all about. As we get into this topic of thriving parishes, I want to start with what a thriving parish is not. Thriving parishes are not just busy, wealthy, large parishes. That's not how we define a thriving parish. We've got to shift our mindset. It's not just about numbers, it's not just about money, it's not just about busyness. Thriving parishes are parishes that are growing in people involved in parish life beyond the weekend experience. People encountering Christ and growing spiritually as disciples, people making disciples, parishioners seeing themselves as disciple makers. And as they grow as disciples, you see enthusiastic generosity of time, talents, and treasure. Disciples want to do those things, they want to give those things. And you see missionary energy, people embracing the mission to make disciples, and you can just feel it, right? You ever been somewhere like that and you're like, this just feels different. I feel an energy. I'm inspired by the place that I'm in. That's what we're looking for. So the question of the day is, why do some parishes flourish and others just struggle or plateau or decline, just don't seem to really go anywhere? So, what our talk today is inspired and informed by is this book, Great Catholic Parishes. In this book, we interviewed 250 parish leaders around the country to discover, to discern, to learn what makes them thrive. And these are leaders at parishes of diverse geography, size, demographics. And out of that, we identified consistent patterns and leadership models. And we found these 4 essential practices of thriving parishes. And in the last 10 years, we have found them to be timeless and transferable. This book originally was released in 2016, 10 years ago. If you think that this webinar is just a pitch for the book, I'm sorry, but it's out of print. So it's not that. I'm going to ask you later if we were to revise it, update it, and put it back into print, if you might be interested. But what's amazing in the last 10 years is we've seen that these practices are timeless and transferable. During the pandemic, the parishes that I talked to, and I called every pastor that we had worked with over that time period, and the ones that I talked to that were doing well were following these practices, and we'll get into what those are. But they're not just circumstantial, they're not just accidental, they're not just locational to a certain place. We've found that parishes that thrive are intentional. They lead differently, they minister differently. So here's our first practice, and that is shared leadership that produces co-responsibility. As I said, these 4 practices, they're not programs, they're ways of thinking and leading. I think we always want, give us a program, give us a paint by numbers, right? And it's good to have clear steps, but what's more important is principles and practices, because those transfer to everything from your staff to your ministry leaders to every area of your parish, religious education, sacramental prep. All of these things are practicing these same 4 things. So shared leadership, and the big idea behind this is that the pastor is not the bottleneck. The pastor is not just the only person making decisions, the only person that can say yes to things. I've been at parishes where I've asked the simplest question like, hey, could I use this? Could I move this over here? could I use this for my presentation? And every single person I asked said, oh, we'll have to ask Father, because they either had to or they felt like they had to. Shared leadership means that clergy, staff, and parishioners are collaborating intentionally, and they're working together, and they're each carrying responsibility and leadership. Now, this requires a high level of trust and collaboration among staff and parishioners. It requires a culture of collaboration where people feel like they're working together towards a common mission. It requires clear roles and clear responsibilities for people. They know what authority they have, they know what they're responsible for, and there needs to also be accountability in that. Brene Brown said that there's no unity without accountability. And so accountability is an important part of shared leadership. I was talking to a leader just yesterday, and we were talking about the importance of this idea of trust but verify. There's a big difference between micromanaging and giving people clear direction and giving them some freedom to act on that direction, but also knowing that it's accountable, that the level of expectation for what we want to happen is there. And that's very clear. And it's not offensive when people hold us accountable, because they're just trying to help us have consistency and have excellence. So we've got to create that. And it also has to be a culture where leaders develop other leaders. They don't see their job as just something that they're going to have as a leader and nobody else is going to have it, but they're inviting and identifying new leaders. They're mentoring and developing those people, and they see themselves as leader makers, not just leaders. I've also heard it said that you can, the best way to evaluate a great leader is not by how many followers they have, but by how many people they form and they release into ministry and leadership. That's a great leader. So, warning signs of weak shared leadership. If you look around, again, as I said, and everything depends on the pastor, and the pastor feels that weight and feels like nothing can happen without them, nothing's going to be executed without them. But they may also have a mentality of that, and that's a challenge as well. But the second thing is we see a lot of silos. Everyone has their little kingdom, their ministry, their cause, their agenda, and there's turf wars, and they're guarding things, and they're not collaborating together with each other. That can be a big problem in parishes that I really like to help parishes break out of that, because it is possible and it is necessary to have a great parish for that to change. Gaps between staff and ministry leaders. If you kind of don't know what's going on with your ministry leaders, if they don't see themselves as people who serve under the staff and along with the staff, and there's an us and them mindset of like, oh, those are the staff, they do the important stuff, or those are the staff, they just are like watchdogs on us, as opposed to, hey, we're all in ministry together. Some of us are on staff, some of us are paid, but your greatest volunteer leaders are really unpaid staff. And in that us and them mindset, what can happen is, and there's a lot of things that can contribute to that. It may be the way staff communicates with ministry leaders. It's not healthy. There's not a consistent forum for ministry leaders and staff to connect together. But I was at a parish once, and I was talking about this. We had a room filled with ministry leaders and volunteers, and I said, you are unpaid staff. And this one lady in the back raised her hand and said, hey, does that mean that I can use the reserved for staff only parking spaces? I was like, oh, wow, that reveals a little tension there. And, that's a good question. Why do they have these reserved spaces if we're all in this together? I've seen some of your parking lots, and I understand why sometimes. But that's something important that would be good to look into. And another thing that you see in a parish where there's weak shared leadership is you see burnout at the top. You see staff that are exhausted. You see a few volunteer leaders who are exhausted because they're doing everything. And most certainly, you see a pastor who is exhausted. Let me say one more thing, though, about the shared leadership webinar. In that webinar, we're going to talk about how to build trust on your team. your staff team, but also with your volunteer leaders? How do we improve that relationship, that culture? We're going to talk about identifying, inviting, and mentoring competent leaders on your staff and throughout the parish. You know, a lot of times people end up leading things not because they're good at it or it's something they care about, but they're just the only person that would say yes. How do we move out of that? How do we move beyond the usual suspects, right? How do we grow that community of leaders? And we also grow it not just in competency, but in age, in gender, in ethnicity. How to create a leadership group that truly reflects our parish. How do we develop a culture of collaboration? And lastly, we're going to talk about moving everyone from this mindset of just helping Father with his vision to a shared vision and a co-responsibility to that vision, where people have a personal sense of ownership in that vision and they are living that out. So that's that first practice, shared leadership. I think it's one of the most important ones in increasing parishioner engagement. It's also one of the most important ones in reaching emerging generations. Is if everyone in leadership at your parish, on councils, on commissions, on staff, or of a certain age, then you're not likely to do a great job of connecting with young adults and young families. Um, People need to see themselves represented in leadership for them to have a greater sense of buy-in. So we'll talk very much about the importance of that and how we navigate that, and how we improve that. So the second practice here is fostering spiritual maturity. Now, what do we mean by fostering spiritual maturity? Fostering spiritual maturity is where people encounter Christ, they grow in their faith. They're not just going through the motions. It's not just a ritual for them. It's not just an identity for them, but they have a vibrant faith, walk with Christ, and they're growing in that. Thriving parishes intentionally move people from a participant to a disciple. They communicate faith from the why. They inspire people with faith. They don't just tell them, here's what we're doing and here's how you do it, or here's what you have to do, or here's what you should do. They inspire people with why they should do it and what God has for them. Parishes that foster spiritual maturity, they communicate on helping people understand what God wants for them in this journey with Christ, not just what God wants from them. For too often and too long, we've just told people, here's what God wants from you. Here's your obligation. Here's what you're supposed to do. Instead of why. Why do we do that? What is God going to develop in our hearts and in our families and in our lives? Jesus said he's come that we might have life and have it more abundantly. Do people know that that's what the faith journey really is all about? Or do they just think it's something they should do or they're supposed to do? Parishes that foster spiritual maturity, they have a clear pathway for spiritual growth. Regardless of where people are at in their journey, they know what to do next to continue growing. And they also these parishes offer spiritual growth opportunities at all different levels of that journey. There's easy entry level for people. There's places where they can consistently grow in their faith, just in like we have normal time, just in the normal seasons of life. And they also help people grow in their faith in all the different ways that they're involved. So, like in ministries, in sacramental prep, these things are never just programs, they're places for people to grow as disciples. They also have leaders who are modeling discipleship. Parishes that are thriving have a staff who sees themselves as disciples and sees part of that as growing as a disciple personally. And they also see themselves as people who are fulfilling this mission to make disciples. And they're growing as a staff together. One of the most important practices I see of healthy parishes is their staff gatherings are not just logistical meetings to navigate the challenges they're facing to make things happen. They're not just places where people argue about who's going to meet where and when. They're places where their team comes together to be disciples together. to grow in faith together, to faith share, to pray with each other, to practice truly what they preach. So that's incredibly important. So, questions for your parish around this area of nurturing spiritual maturity. Do your parishioners know how to grow spiritually at your parish? Do they know where to go and what to do and what to get involved with to grow spiritually, and in different ways to grow spiritually, through serving, through scripture study, through small group faith sharing? Are these opportunities available for them, and do they know how to get involved? Second question is, are you forming disciples and journeying with them, or are you just managing programs? You're just managing religious ed, you're managing sacramental prep, you're just managing these things, but there's not that personal connection in them. There's not that idea that these are opportunities for people to be transformed. Um, does your sacramental prep and religious ed feel more transactional or transformational? Is it something people can just go through to check the box and get what they want? Or is it a place where you're intentionally designing it so that they encounter Christ, that they grow in their faith, that they grow in relationships with others, and that they find a place to belong and to grow and to serve? That's what it looks like when those opportunities are places for people to grow spiritually. And lastly, do leaders talk openly about their own spiritual lives? In your parish, do people see staff and other leaders sharing about their own journey, sharing a witness, sharing about the challenges they're facing, sharing their own prayer needs? You know, as leaders, one way we lead is through vulnerability, through saying, hey, I have that struggle too, or hey, you know, I need you as much as you need me. That mutuality in the faith journey. So in that webinar, we're going to do a deeper dive into that. We're going to talk about forming staff and key volunteers as disciples and disciple makers. We're going to talk about creating programs that transform rather than just transact. And that's based on an encounter and accompaniment model. And we're going to be talking about creating a culture of spiritual growth throughout your parish, where wherever people engage with your parish, whether it be weekend at Mass, whether it be sacramental prep, whether it be a ministry, Knights of Columbus, any of these areas, a service opportunity in your food pantry, are all those things being designed with spiritual growth, discipleship in mind? And we'll talk about how you can do that. So those are the first two practices. So I want to share with you before these last two practices, this is a little commercial break for me to tell you a little more about my ministry and how I might be able to help your parish. The first is through workshops. We do on-site workshops where I come to your parish, and it can be around growing volunteers. It can be a staff development day. It can be your parish mission. It can be a weekend retreat. It can be engaging families and family faith formation. Anything that you're doing, we can develop a workshop around helping you engage your parishioners in growing in that. And the purpose of that is to grow this vision beyond just the staff, but to grow it to all your ministry leaders and volunteers. And if you don't have something you do annually to bring all of those people together for a development day, I really urge you to do that. There's a parish I work with in Houston, St. Ignatius of Loyola, and they do a yearly leadership summit. And it's just where they bring all those people together to invest in them, to develop them, to give them vision, and to help them grow their areas of ministry. The second thing I've put a link in there is for coaching and consulting. And this is where I work directly with you. You're either a pastor or you're a key leader on staff. And we meet every other week for 90 minutes. And we just talk about the challenges that you're facing. We talk about you as a leader. We help you grow as a leader. I've found that most leaders are just kind of like putting out fires and just dealing with what's right in front of them, and not spending enough time to develop themselves as leaders. And as they develop themselves as leaders, everything gets better. So this is where we connect every other week. We have a call, and then throughout the time period between those 2 weeks, I'm sharing with you resources. I'm sharing with you thoughts and ideas based on the things that we're working on together. The link I put in the chat there is just a link for a call. It's not a link to look at another web page about it or to fill out a form. I would just rather directly, let's just talk. No obligation. I'd love to share any ideas I have for challenges you're currently facing during that call. No, there's no cost. It's free. But I found the best way to figure out if these things are going to work is just to jump on a call and talk about it. All right, that's enough about me. I've got a question here, and I believe this one got emailed in to me as well. And the question is, how do you get an overworked, stressed pastor to think about opportunities for shared leadership? That is a great question, and I see this a lot. The first thing I would encourage you to do is to read a book called Leading from the Second Chair. Leading from the Second Chair talks about that unique responsibility and leadership that probably most of you on this call have, of you're leading and you have a lot of responsibility, but you are not the top person in making the final decisions on things. And you are serving them and you're serving their vision. But there's a lot of things that you can't change. And there's a lot of things that you don't have the authority to do like you would like to do it. And so this book really helps navigate that, specifically in the context of the church. It's written by Mike Bonham. I've had him on a previous webinar. If you go back and look at my webinar library, let me add that to our chat here. That's really what would help you the most. But let me just give you some ideas from my experience. First of all, I would encourage you to help your pastor guard his time, meaning a Sabbath time for him, his day off. Sometimes I hear people say, my pastor's overworked and stressed, but yet we reach out to him. We don't guard his time. We just send people to him that we could have helped ourselves. And there's a lot of things that they're having to do that they shouldn't have to do. So guarding that time for them, encouraging them to take that time. Father, it's okay. We've got it covered. You need to take a few days. I really want to help you guard your day off. I know it's important for you to be replenished like that. And so the second thing I would say is to talk to them about it. I know that sounds hard, but we really can't change anything that we're unwilling to talk about. And say, hey, I'm just want you to know, I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for all you do, but I'm also concerned. I'm concerned for your health. I work with a pastor that had 3 arrhythmia situations with his heart in the same month because he was running so frantically. And we talked about what's it look like to slow down and to protect your health so that you can be there for everyone in the long run. And so that's important to have that conversation, but also maybe help your pastor to branch out beyond that by asking them, hey, what are some things that we could delegate? Who are some people? Because you've got to have the people to delegate it to. So since you're the boots on the ground as the people on the staff and in the parish, help identify new leaders and let your pastor know about them, people that would be great leaders at things. Because we can't ask our pastor to not share leadership if we're not providing great leaders to help do that. So, the third step is really, there's sometimes this is just their DNA. It's how they're wired. And that's really hard to work around or to overcome. Just as a person, as a leader, maybe it's what they learned. Maybe it's just their personality. That's where I feel like the book comes in a lot better. I'm just giving you some quick off the top of my head ideas, but the book really helps you navigate that. So I encourage you to talk about that. If your pastor is a bottleneck, are the only choices to accept or move to another parish? No communication. Well, that's a fair question. I know a lot of parish staff that I've talked to that are not happy with where they work. They're not happy with the situation they're in. and they either feel obligated or like there's nobody to take their place, or they don't want to be the bad guy. And I will say this, if you're in ministry, you deserve to work in a place where you feel valued and supported, and you feel like you're excited to get up in the morning to go work with your team and be a part of ministry. And I say that to pastors also, because a lot of times pastors will complain to me about their staff. And I say, Pastor, you're the leader of that staff, and those people don't have to work for you. And you can create the culture that you want, and you can hire the people that you want. So I think what I'm saying is none of us are a victim of our circumstance, right? We all have autonomy. We can all create the future for ourselves. There's this thing called the drama triangle of victim, villain, and persecutor. And most people identify themselves in one of those roles. And the reality is that you aren't a victim. You're a creator, and you can design your life and make your choices. And that person is probably not the villain, but you're perceiving them as that. And another role that people find themselves in is hero. They won't leave because they're going to fix everything. They're going to save their parish. And it's really hard to change your parish in a significant way if the leadership above you doesn't share that vision. And so you can't hero that situation. It's just not going to happen. So the hero needs to coach up the leadership above them, which that book is great with, or decide I need to go somewhere where I feel like I'm on a playing field with people with a similar vision and a heart for that. So that's a little deep, heavy convo, but that's the reality of the situation. I think if you're out there working on a parish staff, you can probably relate to that. So let's move on to our excelling on Sundays practice. I think at the beginning I didn't give you these 4 practices off the top. Maybe I did, but the 4 practices are shared leadership, fostering spiritual maturity, excelling on Sundays, and evangelizing effectively. There you go. Talk about burying the headline. All right. So the core idea behind this is that the weekend experience matters deeply. It's not just something we do every week. It's something that really matters. It's game day for us. This is kind of the big thing that the whole week moves towards. And it's matters deeply. One is because 80% of your parishioners, this is the only time you see them. This is their only experience of your parish. And so if it's not great, if it's not inspiring, if it's not done with excellence, why would they say yes to anything else? Right? They're you're gonna expect that whatever this is like, that's probably what everything else is like. And the other thing is that for about 100% of your visitors, this is their only experience of your parish. And so, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. And so, what is the visitor experience there? I would also add to this, I would tack on to this excelling on Sundays, excelling at weddings and funerals, because these are big visitor experience opportunities for people that would never come to a mass. So, do you think about your weddings and funerals from a perspective of visitor experience, not just of the people attending, but maybe the people that are having the wedding or the funeral, you hardly see them at all. So this is an opportunity for you to engage with them and to give them a great experience where they're like, wow, those people really welcomed me. I know I don't ever go to mass here. I'm on the registry, but they treated me like I was one of their own. They did a lunch for our family after the funeral. There was a ministry that came together and helped do hospitality for us. And that was amazing. Remember this quote when it comes to any of those things. Excellence honors God and inspires people. I hope you'll write that down. Excellence honors God and inspires people. We don't strive for excellence just because we want to look polished and look good. We strive for excellence because we want it to have a great impact on people's lives. So, keys to a great weekend experience. The first is obviously hospitality. We want to create an environment of welcoming and belonging. And I say welcoming and belonging very intentionally there. Welcoming is just being nice, right? I live in Texas. I live in Dallas. In the South, we're real good at being nice, but we're not going to invite you over to our house. Like, we're real good at being friendly, uh, but it doesn't mean I'm going to invite you into my circle, right? Belonging is a place where people know not only are you welcome, but you can belong here. Can I please repeat the last statement? Which last statement? The difference between welcome and belonging, or excellence honors God and inspires people. Hopefully it was one of those two. You know what I'm saying, though? You know the difference between going somewhere where people are nice and going somewhere where you have a sense of belonging. One of the keys to belonging is the question, would I be missed if I wasn't there? Am I known there? Have people taken the time to know my name, to ask about me? Are they curious about me? And would I be missed if I wasn't there? So beyond the hospitality, we look at these three things: hospitality, hymns, and homilies. Excellence in music supports an encounter with Christ, and it connects hearts to the message and to the moment. So we'll talk about how do we do that on different budgets, and what is that? What is excellence in the liturgy and in the music? Um, Homilies, they should be intentionally prepared to support our mission to make disciples. Are they something, pastors and clergy, are they something that you're just kind of throwing together during the weeks? It's only 10 minutes and or 6 minutes, and it's not the main event. um I've known a lot of people that went back to a parish because there was a homily that connected with their heart, and then you can put those online on your website. You can even put them in a podcast where people can listen before they visit, and then go, wow, that's a pastor. I really connected with that pastor. So how do we intentionally prepare homilies throughout the year to help people become disciples and to grow as disciples? And then lastly, maximizing the connection opportunity for deeper engagement. If 80% of your people come to your parish on the weekend, that's really your only opportunity to get them to take a next step. And so, are there ways and places for them to do that on the weekend? Are you intentionally and strategically inviting newcomers and people that just come on Sundays to something a little bit more? Is your parish office only open through Monday through Friday? Is that the only time that people can meet or talk to anyone from your staff about signing up for religious education or a sacrament, or even just to ask questions? Those are important things to talk about. So, honest questions for you. The first place people encounter your parish is on your website. If they're searching for a parish and they're going to be a visitor, is your website welcoming, inspiring, and easy to navigate? Is it visitor focused? I'm not going to do a whole big thing on websites. I'll probably do a websites video in the near future, but something to consider. Go to your website as a visitor and see what you experience. Secondly, what does a first-time visitor experience at your parish on the weekend? Think about that. Attend sometime, just and think about, if I were a visitor, parking, entrance, all of that. Is there a place that I'm welcomed and connected? Or ask a friend to come secret shop your parish for you and let you know what they find. Do you have an intentional strategy for engaging those visitors? And lastly, are you strategic in using that time, as I said, to get parishioners more engaged? So those are all things that we're going to cover in the webinar. And I hope that you'll check that one out. And then the fourth practice is evangelizing effectively. And this is probably the one that is least practiced. It's the one that people have the least pain point for, because it involves people that you don't know. It involves people that aren't there yet. Evangelization exists for people that aren't there yet. I know within the church, there's a lot of different discussions and disagreements about what evangelization is and what it means. We'll talk about that. What do we mean when we say evangelizing effectively? But thriving parishes don't wait for people to come to them. They reach out to people and they engage them and invite them. So, key points in the webinar for thriving parishes that evangelize effectively is Do you have a clear outward focus? Are you intentionally doing things that reach beyond the pews and beyond the parish to the community? Is your goal to be the best parish in your community with the most people going to it? Or is your goal to be the best parish for the community? Service and outreach are great ways to do that. Do you have an invitation culture at your parish where people naturally invite others, coworkers, family, friends, neighbors to come be a part of things? Is evangelization normal and not optional? Do most parishioners see evangelization as something that's for like Green Beret Catholics? That's like the special forces Catholics. That's the hardcore Catholics that actually talk to other people about their faith or invite them to be a part of things. And are those parishioners equipped to share their faith? Do they even know how to share their journey or story of faith? If someone asked them, would they be able to have a conversation about it? So, some culture shifts that are necessary for that. First one is a culture and a mindset from maintenance to mission. And I know that that's Divine Renovations. That's their tagline, from maintenance to mission. So I acknowledge I'm stealing that from them. I will say Father James came through one of our early cohorts in like 2015, and so we feel a kinship there. But they have a mission mindset throughout the parish. They move from an internal focus to one that includes outside people. It's not just a holy huddle where they're just taking care of themselves. And they move from passiveness in parishioners to an active witness wherever they go. So here's my question when we think about the community around your parish and this idea that evangelization reaches out to the community beyond the pews. If your parish were to close tomorrow, would the community care? If your parish were to close tomorrow, would the people that live around your parish and in your community, in your city, would they be sad for what they lost, or would they be happy to have less traffic? Now, some people are going to be happy to have less traffic no matter what you do. But if you reach out and you connect with those people and they know that you care, if your parish begins to be a place that people in the community, when there's a need, when there's a crisis, when there's a problem, they know, hey, that parish, I know they've helped a lot of people. We can go there. So we're going to talk about training parishioners to invite, training them to share their stories, creating low barrier of entry points for people to come experience your parish. And what I mean by that is things that are not just overtly religious or overtly feeling evangelistic, but they're more experience opportunities for people to have a positive connection with your parish, maybe even in ways that help impact their life in a positive way. And then, are we measuring our evangelization impact? Are we measuring how well we're reaching people? Is that even a number we look at or we think about? You can't improve what you don't measure. And what we measure is what matters. It tells people this is what matters to us as a staff. So, out of those 4 practices, shared leadership, fostering spiritual maturity, excelling on Sundays, and evangelizing effectively. Do you have any questions around those 4? Go ahead and drop those in the Q&A if you would. But I want you to think about how all 4 of these things work together. And I know it's a tired analogy, but it's like 4 legs on a table. Shared leadership makes everything sustainable. The staff and the key volunteers aren't exhausted. It engages new people. It engages emerging generations, which ensures that our parish continues to grow and continues to be vibrant. Spiritual maturity fuels evangelization. If people aren't growing in their faith and they're not having encounters with Christ and conversion experiences, they don't really have a story to tell, right? As people come out of OCIA or an Acts retreat or something like Alpha or Christ Life, when they come out of those things, they have a story to tell. They want to talk about it, right, with others. So growing people spiritually, helping them encounter Christ and grow in their faith actually fuels evangelization. Excellent Sundays create a desire for more. They create something that people may come in just expecting the usual, and they leave going, wow, that felt great. I want more of that. Maybe I will go to that young adults dinner. Maybe I will take part in that workshop. And then evangelization, it brings new people into the community, but it also creates a relationship with the community that says we're here for you. We matter. You matter. And it also really keeps people growing in their faith. If your parishioners have a sense of mission, that in and of itself helps people continue to desire to grow in their faith. But you see, those four things, they all contribute to each other. They are like four legs on a table, and if one of them is broken or missing, it's not going to be balanced. If one of these stirred something in you, please register for that webinar. And as we're wrapping up here, I'm just going to look at a couple of our questions. Can you provide some examples of things that parishes do when they just begin to focus externally? Great question, Mark. One thing they do is they reach out to leaders in their community that are already doing great work, and they say, how can we help you? A huge mistake parishes make is they decide they've got to start up all their own things, right? And a lot of times parishioners will come to you and they have a something they're passionate about. We've got to start this ministry, right? We need to do this. Nobody's helping these people, or we need to do that. You ever get that? The first thing I ask that person to do is, hey, go do a little research for me and find out where this is already being done in our community. Let's see what we can learn from them. Let's see if they need help, or if they do need a new thing started up in the community and they could help us start it. So that builds trust. It builds, I like to say that these kinds of things, they build goodwill, which opens hearts to the good news. Good works create goodwill, which opens hearts to the good news. And I'm not just saying that evangelization is just outreach and in ministry and serving people in that way. There's the whole other side of actually sharing the gospel and the charisma. And so if you're looking to grow in that way, I would also say, think about starting just a small group of something like Alpha. Don't roll it out to your whole parish. Identify some people that are interested in growing in evangelization and say, hey, why don't you guys take a few months and do this program? Alpha's free. Christ Life is inexpensive. It's great too. Then as those people go through it, their faith will be inspired. They'll be equipped as leaders in evangelization, and then they can help form a coalition of people to grow your evangelization efforts in the community. Can you recommend how to create a culture of giving, generosity of time, talent, and treasure among the 20 to 50 year age group? I can. That is the group. It's millennials and Gen X a little bit. These people respond to causes more than institutions. So if you're just asking them to give their, like if you're going to do a typical stewardship weekend, and the pastor's going to give a homily on why you should share your time, talent, and treasure, and then we're going to do a ministry fair and sign people up. Anybody ever done that? How did that work out for you? It has such minimal response. Even if people sign up out of obligation, you get like less than 10% follow through on that. But whenever you communicate about time, talent, or treasure, places that you need people to serve, things you want them to give to, things that you want them to be a part of, you've got to inspire them with why it matters to them, why they might want to be a part of it, and why it matters to the people who are receiving the benefits of that. So if it is money or if it is an outreach opportunity, have somebody share a witness of how that kind of ministry impacted their life. If it's you need people to serve, let's say something very basic like a parish festival or a carnival. Why are we even doing this, and how does it connect to our mission? And how is this an opportunity to engage with people and help them grow in their faith? People are inspired by mission. They're inspired by things that matter. So that would be my big answer to that question. And in the giving thing, again, the more you share stories of how your parish is positively doing things with their money, And that could be outreach in the community, that could be supporting things around the world, that could be changed lives. People, hey, because you gave, we were able to put on this Acts retreat, and here's somebody sharing their story of how that retreat changed their life. The more you share those stories throughout the year, not just when you need money, the more you share those stories throughout the year, the more people are eager to give when you do ask for money, because they're connecting you with the good things that you're doing. So, any other questions? We're at the end of our hour. I actually ended a little early, but encourage you again to sign up for those other webinars, just because it's a great reminder of how we can grow in those 4 areas. And I think all of us, if we have a great mindset, we can. I'll want to give you the results of our survey here. The number one need that people spoke about was parishioner engagement. The second one was attracting and retaining young families. The third was recruiting and developing volunteers. And the last was reaching and evangelizing people beyond the pews. Actually, the last one was the weekend mass experience. Only one person said that was a great need. The evangelization one, I never get a big response from that, because it's such, for a lot of people, it's an uncomfortable topic. They don't really know how to address it in an approachable way. And it's not, there's nobody at your parish probably complaining that you're not evangelizing enough. If there is, it's just 1 or 2 people, and man, you need to latch hold of them and put them in leadership. But it's not something it's not really a pain point a lot of time. So the second question was, in your own words, what are your biggest challenges? I'm not going to share all those right now, but 32 of you answered that. Thank you so much. That's going to be so helpful in creating future webinars, especially. And 30 of you said you'd be interested in the book. So I will go to our publisher with that idea and information, and we'll see what we can do there. So thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope this was an encouragement to you. If you have any questions for me directly, my email is just john@greatcatholicparishes.org, JOHN@greatcatholicparishes.org. I'd love to hear from you, feedback, good, bad, otherwise. And I'd love to hear any way that we could help you. Meg Nelson, hello, great. So glad you joined us. I'm going to reach out to you. We haven't talked in a while. Any of my friends on here that have been to a lot of these webinars, or I've been to your parish, I'd love to hear from you. So just reach out. Be fun to just jump on a call and catch up. All right. Thank you all. God bless you as you go serve God and serve your parishes and your diocese. God is with you to the end of the age. Take care. God bless.